Poi alle 007.
What's always interesting watching a movie like that with other Bond fans is obviously the fact that all the laughs are in the right place and everybody's enjoying the same thing. When you're watching it with somebody who's in it, it's always quite interesting as well. And the fact of the matter is that Paul's in it a lot. As the stunt coordinator, nowadays a lot of stunt coordinators tend to have a team of people who will provide the action and they coordinate the action with them. But License to Kill is a very good example of Paul being in the thick of it a lot. He does the first gag in the picture, which is doubling Robert Davi jumping from the Jeep into the hedgerow, and then the big fire gag at the end, and you're in it about half a doubling Q. Falling off the chair and doing all of that sort of stuff. What was that like to work on from your point of view? I mean, because originally, before the Timothy Daltons, the last movie that you really worked on was Octopussy, a stunt supervisor.
Yes, yes.
So you were originally supposed to be coordinating on A View to a Kill, if I'm not mistaken.
2 weeks before we were supposed to go to San Francisco, Barbara said to me, Martin wants to do it on his own. He was Martin Grace was Roger's double, and he'd had the accident on Octopussy, and he wanted to become the sole supervisor on that. So 2 weeks before, I was a member of the Tarmac Club, waving the plane goodbye. So, yes.
Off to bigger and better things. But then, of course, the type of action that you see in these movies is very different from the Roger action. Roger, with a lot of the dialogue, would let you know a couple of pages beforehand, I'm going to do a funny line in a minute and prepare you for it, right? Well, similarly, with the action on the Timothy pictures, it's not the sort of action that you would associate Roger with, for instance, in the character of Bond. So what sort of conscious decision did you have to make in order to change that type of action around and make it more him?
Well, when we started The Living Daylights, Timothy and I spoke about it, and we looked through the storyboards. We had 4 minutes at the beginning of the movie to make Timothy Norton a new Bond. And he wanted to make it really real. He wanted to do it the way Daniel Craig is doing it now. He said, if I get a punch on the nose, I want my nose to be red for the next 2 scenes. If I get kicked in the leg, I want a limp. And I said, well, I don't know if, Cubby wants to go that way. So he had a talk with Cubby, and Cubby said no. After Roger just sort of brushing his hair back and carrying on, it was fantasy. But Timothy wanted to make it real, and we really had to slow him down. He got a lot of the stuff he wanted to do, which was a much more vicious Bond than Roger had been. But we just had to try to appease Cubby and the audience, but he really did want you to make it much more vicious.
It's also the case in these type of pictures of bringing in specialists. Up until this point, there'd been lots of people within the British and American stunt performers who were very capable of doing all of the bits and pieces. But, that when you get a sequence like Bond skis behind a plane barefoot, you've got to do your best to try and, right, who wants the job? And all the stunt guys are going, no, not me, thank you. No, there's got to be somebody else who can do it. So you had to find a guy, David Reinhardt, who kind of, I suppose he invented it, did he?
Well, he was the Florida champion at that time, barefoot water skiing. You have to go at 47 miles an hour, I think, to get up onto your feet. You drop your skis and then you go on one foot and then the other foot, and you take off. Or you can do it from a special bar from behind a very speedy boat. Mm-hmm. The problem was he was brilliant at it, and when we came to do it, we obviously had him on skis, and what he was going to do was just drop one ski and drop the other ski, and once he hit the water, the plane wasn't strong enough to pull him out of the water. So every time we tried the plane would get us as fast as it could, and he would hit the water and the plane would stop. just the drag of his body on the water, we couldn't get him to do it.
Right.
So what I had to do in the end is got some plastic skis about this big with clamps on them, and he was able to do it. We were able to get the plane to go, take him out of the water as long as he got up as fast as he could onto his little skis. But I still couldn't get him to catch the plane up because the plane just didn't go fast enough. It was still a drag. So what I had to do was have him go out on pull himself out as far as he could away from the plane, and then I got the plane to turn into him so that he could actually meet up with it. And that's what we did on that occasion.
And of course, with that sequence as well, catching the plane is one thing, but then transferring to it is a different thing. And Paul did the transfer, and you appear to hit the plane like a ton of bricks.
Yes,
at the time.
Yes, it was a bit heavy.
I know that just we'll just cover this before we go to questions from the audience. But it was a fairly painful experience, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was, and I wanted to make it look right and be sort of continuity because he was being towed by a spear gun cable. I thought, right, what I'll do is I'll have a piece of wood just hanging on the end of the cable so that when we took off, you could actually see the spear gun or the cable. As it happened, I hit the side of the plane and we took off. And that was me hanging on the side, and I dropped my legs down. There's no cables, you're just hanging on to the side. So we were going up.
Who needs CGI?
Yeah. So swung down and got up again. And as I was laying there, it was like somebody hit my soles of my feet with a baseball bat. It just went whack, and I thought, where does that come from? And what it was is that the piece of wood got stretched on the rope and came up like a catapult, on a bungee, came up and hit my feet. If it had gone around the ailerons or around the plane, we would have gone in. But lucky enough, it didn't, and I was able to carry on and climb up. And then the next sequence is the aerial unit. They did a fantastic job. Once you get over, I went up to about 200 feet. Once they get up to 500 feet there on parachutes, and they do the rest of it.
BJ Worth and his team doing that, but it's the amount of stuff that you did in that film is extraordinary. I was just saying at the top of this that nowadays they would get other performers to do it. Were you always going to do, like for instance the Hemingway House, the jump from the balcony down? That's you. Were you always going to do that, or was it just a case of not, because Simon Crane was doubling, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I think I'd sent Simon off somewhere else. So
Simon, get me some tea, would you? Yeah. He's going to do this job.
I don't know, he might have gone, he wasn't down in Florida with us at the time at Key West, so I did it myself. So a lot of times things happen and you just have to step in and make sure that the job's done.
The doubling Q was quite nice as well. You just,
yes.
You elbowed me. That's me.
Yes, but I'd forgotten about that.
You'd forgotten about it.
As soon as I saw him going through the door, I thought, that was me. I had a grey wig on. Yeah. So, yes, I double Q as well.
The magic of cinema, marvellous. If what we're going to do is we're going to try and open this up to the audience there. There are microphones, I believe. People will have microphones at the side of the stage. When I say there are people, there is a young lady here with a microphone. And if you would like to ask a question in related to the movie or Bond or to Paul's career, simply put your hand up. There's a hand right over here. And there is a microphone coming to you. And there we go. Right, fire away, my friend. It's not on, but you do have a microphone. We didn't say it was going to work. There we are. No, take two, as you were.
Oh, God, sorry. Thank you so much for joining us, Paul.
My pleasure.
Stunts. Anyway, I was actually asked to ask you by a colleague about the fire burn for Robert Darby at the end. I've been told it was anything but standard, whatever that means.
Yes, yes. Well, I wasn't supposed to do the job. I'd already booked an American stunt guy to do it. And the day before we were going to shoot, he came to me and he said, look, if I leave tonight, I can go to LA and get a job for maybe 2 months. I said, OK, go ahead, go and do it. I don't know whether he really had a job or he just didn't fancy doing the full burn.
Tossed a coin and gone, no, thank you.
So, because fire is dangerous, it's one of our most dangerous stunts we do. You can't run away from fire. Once it's on you, you have to put it out or somebody else has to. I once saw a special effects guy standing by an explosion, and he was hiding behind a low wall, but a fire sort of gel fell on his back, and he screamed and he ran, and we couldn't touch him. We couldn't get him to put him out. He really burnt he tore his clothes off in the end. But so yeah, it's a very dangerous job. So I said, leave your mask, your glove, and he had a 3-minute air bottle. And once you go on air, once you put your mask on, you have to go on air because you can't breathe. You've got gel on a sort of balaclavas, safety masks. And then you've got your rubber mask on the top. And I had 3 minutes of air, and I figured that by the time the wardrobe messed about, making sure the collar was right under his shirt, and the makeup department, the hair department put a wig on, I'd say about a minute would be gone. Then getting me into position on the set would be another 30 seconds. And then the guys have got to gel me up. So I figured I'm going to have about a minute left on air. So they put me in position, and you put your little tube in your mouth, and you suck it up one side and you blow out the other. So you're trying to get your air into your mouth. So they stood me in position. I could just see there was a scratch in one of the glasses that you have on underneath the mask. And I could just see Timothy Dalton sitting opposite me, looking very apprehensive. And I'd already told him, I said, as soon as they hit me with fire, run. Just get out of the way because it will get hot. So he
didn't need telling twice, I imagine. No.
Well, so I said, OK, stand by. I mean, they said to me, OK, stand by. And I was in position and I was breathing, and they gelled me up. And I figured I want to be on fire for about 20 seconds. It's a lot, 20 seconds of a full burn. So I figured I had almost a minute left. They said, turn over and hold it. There's a problem with the camera. Oh. So I'm going, but it seemed to go forever, but it was probably only a few more seconds. And they said, OK, turn over, roll cameras, and action. And woof, I was up in flames, and all I could see was colours through this crack. And I went, nothing. And I thought, don't panic, just try to blow out and then see if you can get some in. And I blew out sideways, and I tried to suck. It was like sucking treacle up a tube. It was a little bit of air came in, and then I had to do the job. So I then fell over. Timothy had gone by then. I fell over on my knees, got up. It's only a short version you see on here.
Even the editor, I mean, even the long version, you do tend to lose a great deal of the movement that you were doing. Yeah,
so I went, I'd figured out, I rehearsed, I was going alongside the truck, field of truck, and then there was a flame bar on the floor that they were going to bring up big flames. Once I'd fallen through it, they were going to bring the rest of it up as though it all blown up. And I put rocks along the floor, and I could feel them with my feet, and then fell forward, and then they brought it all up. And that's when all the boys come in and they put you out. And I was out of air by then. You just hope that they're going to get to you quick enough. And they pulled the mask off and pulled me to my feet, and they were shaking my hand. Oh, great job, great job. That's when I was burning. The heat was, heat transference through the costume. It was getting hotter and hotter, and it dissipated fairly quickly, but I was going, wow, that's all right, it's all right. Oh. So yeah, it was a nice job to have done, but I don't know whether I would have needed another minute would have helped.
So remember that next time when you see fire jobs on screen, that not only is he remembering, right, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, he's then remembering, I've got to act. Oh, and I've got to try and keep myself alive by blowing down and sucking up this tube, desperately trying to find it. It's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And you say yourself there, in the edit, you've explained yourself there, the movements that you did during that take are far greater than the edit, you know.
Yes.
Personally, I'm biased, but I think you've got mugged in the edit. But, you know, what can you do? But that's evidently the shot.
Felt that it was too violent and too upsetting.
The head exploding was fine,
yeah.
But you being on fire for a bit too long, you know. In the old days, of course, in the days of fire jobs of that nature, I think it was Roy Alon was telling me once, he said, I did his first fire job, a fellow, Terry Walsh, rushed up to him and said, here, quick, put this in your pocket. And he said, right, okay, put it in his pocket, did the fire job. And then he came up to him after and said, can I have it? He said, what? He said, in your pocket. And he went, what is it? And he said, a baked potato. It's the sort of
the wicked
sense
of humour. That's Terry.
Any other questions? Anybody else want to? There's hands up if we can find anyone you want to go to. There's a gentleman here at the front.
Thank you, Bob. I was wondering, were there any stunts during License to Kill, any other productions you were in where the actors themselves did the stunts that perhaps they shouldn't have done?
Oh, topical questions now we're doing. Look at this.
Most actors want to do their own stunts until they get a little hurt, and then they don't want to do it anymore. Their ego usually takes over in the beginning. When they're first starting, Roger never needed to prove himself, so he never wanted to do any stunts. He never. But a lot of actors, young actors, want to do them. And you, like when I first got Timothy, I hadn't worked with him. I knew he was a great stage actor. But putting him on top of that Jeep on Living Daylights, I had a choice. I could have tied him on there and he wouldn't have been able to move and he would have been safe. But if the Jeep had turned over on the corner or something, he would have been crushed into it. So I just had to decide that whether he was strong enough to hold on, excuse me, I'd put handholds on the top of the Jeep, and I put a platform on the right-hand side of the Jeep that you couldn't see from the camera, and I was on that. I was wired on there, and every time he put his, he got a bit too brave and put his leg over, I would whack his leg and make sure he got back on.
Put that back.
But they do. Roger never wanted to. I remember one time we'd done all the stuff on Octopussy, running over the top of the train, diving over pipes, under bridges. And we sort of got him into the studios and got him on top of the train, and we did all the close-ups and whatever. And then there was one time they brought the whole train, I mean a big coach, from Peterborough into the studios so that he could climb up and get on top. And he sat there in his deck chair, and John Glenn said to him, "Okay, Paul will show you what you've got to do." I was dressed like him anyway. I was doubling him. So he said, "Okay," and so I climbed up and got onto the top of the train, and Roger said, "John, do you want me to look down at the camera?" He said, "No, just climb straight up." He said, "Well, Paul can do that." And I did it in the studio. So, yeah, he didn't have to prove anything, but he was a very funny guy.
Different breed, completely. Now, there's the gentleman here in the white jumper here, because if Phil doesn't ask a question, he'll burst. So there we are. There's going over to you now.
Hello?
That's on.
Hello, Paul. I realise that you've probably been in lots of my favourite films.
However.
Including The Great Top Secret, if you remember being in that.
Yes. I was Croissant. The French one, yes.
Yeah, it was a great film, I love that one. But my question's about Moonraker, because I know that you've quite a few parts in Moonraker. And I know that he was involved in the space battle in Moonraker. I wonder if you've got any recollections of that particular sequence.
Yes, it was all shot. That sequence was on 007 stage. They covered the whole, must cost fortunes, of black velvet all the way around 007 stage, there must have been probably a dozen of us on wires coming out of the space shuttle, lifting up, and we had 4 packs on our back that were lasers that worked. So we could actually be traveling along and press these things and lasers would work. But they were very heavy. And when you're flying, you're being pulled up, you're on harnesses under your crutch. And with that weight, there was no way of getting the weight to go anywhere else. So your eyes were watering most of the time, and you were hanging there for a long time. And a couple of times I looked over and one of the stunt guys would go, absolutely pass out. It's because the blood's not getting to your brain. So yeah, it was painful. Or anywhere else for that matter. Yeah. Well, eventually, the thing is, it was painful, but we did some great shots. So I got shot in close up, which was nice, coming out of the shuttle, and then Derek Medding said to me, "Paul, get right down the other end of the stage on the platform," and I was the first guy out on the villain side, so I probably shot myself, which I've done lots of time in my career, I tell you.
Yeah, well, it's half the fun, isn't it? But
Yes.
you say, look, I've just shot my... The same in GoldenEye is another example. There's a stuntman called Paul Heisman, him and Gary Powell killed themselves about 5 times in the pre-title sequence. Any more questions? Any more hands up? There's a couple of hands down here at the front. Here we go.
Hello. I just wanted to know, or have your memories, how great was it working with Al Harbright? Brilliant, genius producer.
With
remembering Cubby.
Oh, Cubby was wonderful. Yeah, he was a lovely man. He was a true old-style professional producer. What he said went. You asked for something and he didn't think it would work, he'd go, no. And that was it. He knew the business so well. I remember at one time we were doing Living Daylights on the frozen lake. And the boys, the stunt guy, the special effects guys needed a big crane to come in and pick up the Aston Martins and put them on the cannon, which was going to be shot over the border, over the fence. And they said, please, can we have it? And the production manager said, no, it's too expensive. And we all sat, and I remember sitting in a big boardroom, going through this, checking out things, what we need for next week. And one of the other stunt special effects guys, anyway, he asked Cubby, he said, can we have this? And Cubby said to the production manager, can they have that? And they said, no, it's too expensive. And he said, John, do you need it? And John said, yeah. We said, give it to him. And that was it. He got the biggest crane he needed, and it saved like 2 days' work. Instead of physically trying to lift this Aston Martin into position in 20 below on the frozen lake, he got it. But that was Cubby, and he was the loveliest man you could ever wish to meet. On the lake, he would, when all the boys were working on the lake, but as soon as they came into the hotel at night, give them all a drink. And when the lake was needed to be cleared, because the snow was laying on the lake, which is like a blanket on it, and the ice melts underneath. So they had bulldozers and vehicles clearing the snow off the top. And he said to Barbara, look after the boys. And she went out there with bottles of brandy at night and giving all the drivers a swig of brandy. So, yeah, he was a lovely man.
I think maybe it's another reason why that period, that Roger period particularly, was so successful, because it was effectively a one-man operation. The fact that whatever it was he wanted, if we need Roger for another movie, well, we'll just play backgammon,
yes,
hope for the best, and then whoever wins, yeah, okay, I'll do another one. It was the old school, really old-fashioned sort of stuff.
But lovely man, lovely man.
We've got a few more minutes left. Any more questions? Anybody want to ask any questions? There's hands up at the back of the room. Yeah, so we'll get the mic over to you. There we go. It is en route to you as we speak.
Roger was a lovely man. He was so funny. The times that he would take time out to make a gag. I remember one time we were doing an Octopussy, and he was climbing from the balcony in the Indian Palace, and he was going into Octopussy's room, but he had to climb over. It was about 12 feet off the ground, and he had to step over this, and there was a gap between the two balconies. And I said to John Glenn, wouldn't it be great, as he's stepping over, we could have some pigeons go up in front of the camera. It's a low-angle camera, and we could have some pigeons go up. It'd frighten the audience, and it'd, frighten the Roger. So he said, "Yeah, okay, you're the pigeon wrangler." I said, "Oh, thanks." So I said in the morning, I said to the prop department, "Can you get me half a dozen or a dozen pigeons?" And they said, "Yeah, like it was going out for a bottle of milk." Where'd you get a dozen pigeons? So anyway, in the afternoon, we all set it all up. I'm standing on a box under the camera, looking up, because the balcony was up there. So I said, pigeon, I put one pigeon under one arm, pigeon under the other arm, one this side, one that side. So I'm standing on the box, ready to go. Roger starts to walk across, turn over, action, and Roger says, hold it, I can't, I've got to go to the loo. So he gets down, goes all the way over to wherever he's going, came back, it was about 5-8 minutes. So, okay, so I put the pigeons back, now I've got to get them out, pigeon, 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 standing on the box, ready to go, the camera's just above my head, and action, and he starts to crawl across. And as he steps across, I let the pigeons go. Woof, up they go, all the feathers come flying down, and an egg hit me on the head, swim down my face. Roger was in hysterics, as the crew was. He'd gone all the way over to the canteen to get a fresh egg so he could drop it on my head. That was Roger. He would, any gag he could do.
Could you see Daniel Craig doing that? Yeah, maybe not. Right, question from the back of the room.
Yeah, do you think the action and tone of the Violence and License to Kill was a good, welcome change to pave the way for what we have now?
Paul?
Well, when we were doing it, it was, good old-fashioned punch-ups. You get a little bit of martial arts come into it, depending on the film. But mostly people don't know martial arts. So everyone in the movies now knows martial arts, and they're fantastic at it. But it was good old-fashioned barroom brawls when we first started. I started in the 60s. No, I hear you say it looks too young.
Surely not.
But yes, I did start in the 60s. So it was extras becoming stuntmen and a few sort of PT instructors and army sort of instructors that came into becoming stunts. So it took probably, when we started having to compete with the Bourne Identity, I think, on the Bonds, it started having to become more violent and to keep up with the modern trend of fighting.
What I always found fascinating with that comparison is that the people who made the action on the Bourne Identity are the people who made the action on Quantum of Solace. It is the same team of people, more or less.
Yeah.
So they're just taking that action and going, well, that really works in this. Let's try it over there as well. So I think, even Batman knows martial arts these days. All this sort of stuff.
Yes,
so it progresses as time goes on. Time for a couple more questions. No hands at the back of the room there. There's some hands in the middle. There we go.
I was looking at your profile there.
You were looking at my what? Sorry?
Your profile.
Oh, not mine. I was going to say. It's been a long time since I've had that up.
And it said you were the stunt coordinator on Aliens.
Yes, indeed.
It's my favourite movie I've seen here in Straw Cinema as well. I just wondered if you have any memories and what it was like working on that.
It was wonderful to work with James Cameron. he's a very hard taskmaster. He wants to put his thumb on every department. But I got on very well with him, and my task was to, he first said to me, I don't want men in rubber suits. I don't want them to look like men in rubber suits. So I had to come up with ideas of using wires and different tricks so that they look like creatures. At one stage I had the guys, and I had to have tall, thin guys to be the aliens. And one time I had them with casters on their chest, so that their chest was on the floor, their arms were this shape, and I had the tails on wires, on like fishing wires, so they could run along the floor. So they really looked like scorpions. And another time, we built sets upside down so that when they look, I don't know if you remember the film, but when they're in the command center and he looks up and they sees them coming through the roof, and he lifts up the panel and sees them upside down coming towards him and coming on the flat. So what we did was build the whole set upside down, and we had them on wires, some facing that way, some facing that way. So that when you cut it together, it looked like they were running towards you, but one of them was running along the ceiling. And when we came to having the Queen, I had to have two guys in the body of the Queen to operate the small arms and then operate the second arm. They had two small arms and two big ones.
Yeah.
So I had them upside down on their sides, operating those. They were back to back. It took like 30 people to operate the Queen. When she stood up, she was like 14 feet high when she stood up. So there was someone on the head, somebody on the teeth, somebody on the tail, on the arms. When they had the fight with the power loader, there was a hell of a... There was more people than you would expect to make this section of the film work, because everybody had their job, and all had to happen in sync. So that when she swings, when Sigourney swings the arm and hits the head of the Queen, all that had to be a reaction for everybody within that suit. Yeah, it was difficult, but very satisfying.
And you know, this again is another reason why it's great to have somebody like Paul to come along and have a chat in connection with these type of movies, because all of this was done for real. Now that same sequence could be created in post from a CGI perspective. You know, nowadays you expect a certain level of CGI, but to say that, you know, inside the Queen you've got a number of people here, some people operating this, you've got a number of people downstairs, they've all got to be in sync together. It's extraordinary to think that all of that stuff was done for real. Now, there's a hand right in the middle there. Is that David?
It is
David.
I don't think I need the microphone.
No, we can hear you from here. Come on ahead.
Can I just ask about your line in the opening of The Living Daylights? It's one of my favourite parts, and I want to know how you got to say that line, and can you also say it for us now?
Ah.
4 years at RADA for this. Yes, I wasn't supposed to. I never volunteer for that sort of thing. But John Glenn said, you can play that part. I said, one of the other guys, no, you're going to play that. So, yes, I had to be standing there. Timothy, this is on Living Daylights. Do you remember when he's running down the rock and he bumps into a guard there, and that's me. And I have to fire the gun at him and say, hold on, you're dead. But to do that, all the crew lined up behind the camera. And I had to turn around and say with a serious face, hey, hold on, you're dead.
There it is.
Oh, please, please.
Worth every penny of the fee right there.
But yes, I mean, the crew are terrible. That's why I don't like doing them. They're making faces and gestures that try to break you up, but I did it in the end.
Well, I certainly want to say a huge thank you to Paul for coming along and doing this today. Would you thank Paul Weston for me?
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd also very much like to thank the lovely people from the Prince Charles Cinema who have agreed to do all of this today, and our friends, of course, from Really 007 Pod. And here is Tom to tell you a little bit more.
You can hear loads of our other episodes on iTunes, Spotify, and our YouTube channel, where we have interviews, special episodes, and reviews of all the Bond films. Simply search Really 007 Pod, and you should find loads of weird and wonderful content.
Remember, you're only president for life. Really 007.